The Melbourne Storm dynasty might just be over. 5 losses in a row for the Melbourne Storm. They've ruined childhoods and now they're ruining their own 2026 season. Melbourne Storm, 5 losses in a row for the first time since 2012. Now, if you're a Melbourne Storm optimist, you're going to say that we lost 5 in a row in 2012 and we went on to win the premiership. Spoiler alert, you're not winning the premiership. But in all seriousness, it's not all doom and gloom for Melbourne. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at the numbers behind the Melbourne Storm's demise. Why are the Melbourne Storm on this losing streak? How do they turn it around? And crucially, can they turn it around? By the end of this 10-minute video, you'll have the answer to those questions. But Melbourne Storm, you've ruined lots of childhoods, and so karma has come to get you. Now, if you are new, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. We have now surpassed 2,000 subscribers on Larry Talks. So I want to say thank you for all your love and support. Look for me at the Bulldogs Parramatta game and the Roosters Dragons game next week. I'll be talking to fans to get your opinion on all things rugby league and pushing your opinion over the try line. Alright, now let's get back to the video. Alright, so let's start with the obvious. Melbourne won their first 2 games of the season against the Parramatta Eels and the St. George Illawarra Dragons. They scored 52 points against the Parramatta Eels. They scored over 40 points against the St. George Illawarra Dragons. With an average of around 49 points over 2 games, brilliant. Crucially, they were only conceding an average of 12 points. In this 5-game losing streak, the Melbourne Storm's average points have reduced to 16.8. That's a 66% collapse. Points conceded have now ballooned from 12 to 32 points. That's 167% worse than where they were compared to the opening 2 games of the season. But it's not all doom and gloom. In those 5 losses, 3 of those games have been lost by 4 points or less. The robotic, methodical Melbourne Storm that we came to know through Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk and Cameron Smith, those latter 2 crucial to that control, is now gone. The way Melbourne play in 2026, and heck, even in 2005 and 4, where they have made grand finals in that period, has changed. That's full credit to Craig Bellamy. He knows how to use the tools that he has and maximize them so that he can get the best out of his team to maximize results. Jerome Hughes, Cameron Munster, and David Farlogo are not Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk, and Cameron Smith. They are very different players, but what these 3 players are explosive ball runners. Whereas in Cooper Cronk and Cameron Smith, you had game managers. People who could be on-field generals, who are capable of being the coach's voice on the field. Cooper Cronk knew how to control a game of rugby league. He changed the game. Whether if his team were behind, he knew how to be methodical, keep the team to the process, and get them back on top. Whether that be through a 40-20. Cameron Smith doing the same. A kick on an early tackle to get the team down to the opposite end with a big defensive set. Whatever was needed from the Melbourne Storm, those 2 players were the anchors. It's not the current Melbourne Storm. There's also been so much loss in terms of the middle. We can't dismiss the size that the Melbourne Storm are lacking at the moment. I'm going to give you some context before I go into the stats. Big Nelson's retired. He's decided he wants to be Anthony Mundine. Eli Katoa has not played a game so far this season due to his horrific injury in the Pacific Test at the back end of last year. And Tui Kamika is now thankfully on the road to recovery, but he has been unavailable in the middle as well. You have lost 3 key, sizable, powerful ball runners from your NRL team lineup, and it is starting to have an impact. So what are the stats telling us behind Melbourne's losing streak? Let's start with the running meters. In the opening 2 rounds, Melbourne averaged between 1,750 meters to around 1,950 meters. In this 5-game losing streak, that significantly dropped to around 1,250 and 1,350 running meters. That's a minimum of 350 running meters lost from the Melbourne Storm side over this 5-game losing streak. They are conceding more running meters in these 5 games than they had in the previous 2 where they had 1. Missed tackles have exploded. In this losing streak, the Melbourne Storm are averaging between 30 to 40 missed tackles per game. The error average has also increased over the 5-game losing streak, but I'm only going to highlight one critical statistic here. Storm have the equal 3rd worst amount of errors in the opposition's 10-meter zone. They're making critical mistakes in the attacking zone of opposition teams, which means they're not giving themselves the best opportunity to score points. And that would be a massive contributor to why you're seeing the average points scored in rounds 1 and 2 significantly drop off in rounds 3 to 7. We also need to highlight the key players being missing. I spoke a little bit earlier about Eli Katoa. He hasn't played a game this season, and I think Jerome Hughes is deeply missing Eli Katoa, as are the Melbourne Storm. Eli Katoa's statistics from the 2025 season. He was a monster, averaging 143 metres a game, 57.3 post-contact meters, 32 tackles, all with a 91% tackle efficiency rate. Look at how many points the Melbourne Storm's right-hand edge are conceding. I mean, I have to ask questions about Warwick's error against the Canberra Raiders. Thankfully, it was pulled back because of an accidental offside. I was about to start a match-fixing investigation for the way he dropped that ball. So how do the Melbourne Storm correct this? The good news is, given that they only lost 3 games by 4 points or less, that says that they're not very far away. Melbourne played best and they're not chasing the scoreboard. Melbourne Storm score first, they tend to win those games. Crucially, they need some size to return back to this team. You can reduce errors. The personnel change doesn't matter, but this is the National Rugby League. You need good players to win rugby league games. Tui Mika is now out of hospital, recovering from his stroke, thank God for that, and he'll add some much needed size and power to the Melbourne Storm middle. That will significantly help the Melbourne Storm in getting over the advantage line and making more meters. Also, let's not forget the Craig Bellamy effect. This coach is brilliant. In my mind, the greatest rugby league coach of all time. He's engineered turnarounds before. We opened the start of the video by highlighting a 2012 stat. The Melbourne Storm have been here before. In 2012, they went on to win the NRL Premiership. I personally don't believe this Melbourne Storm side is capable of winning a Premiership just purely on personnel, but you cannot write off the brilliance of Craig Bellamy. He is a generational coach, and if anyone can turn this around, it is Craig Bellamy, and you'd be a brave man or woman to bet against him, and I'm not prepared to do that. So for the Melbourne Storm, it's really simple. Less errors, get over the advantage line, try and score first, hopefully get some troops back. If you have the ball, I really don't think Melbourne can afford any injuries to their forwards so far this season, as it's being proven. They need to get Tui Mika back as soon as possible. It's a more mobile forward pack, so Melbourne need to play with a high-speed defensive line. Melbourne Storm could take a play out of the Bulldogs book from previous years. Bulldogs have had a smaller, more mobile forward pack. So where they used that to their advantage was to have a really high-speed defensive line. The Melbourne Storm need to get back to doing what they do best, and that's suffocating rugby league sides. The Penrith Panthers, the Canterbury Bulldogs, and the Melbourne Storm, for me, are the 3 best teams at doing this. High-speed defensive lines suffocate the opposition into surrender and defeat. The Melbourne Storm have lost their way a little bit in that regard due to errors, missed tackles, and chasing the scoreboard. Score first, defend fast, get Tui Mika back, hold the ball. Melbourne Storm will be back in the winner's circle in absolutely no time. But there you have it. There was my quick Melbourne Storm review reaction. There was also noted improvement, obviously, against the Canberra Raiders last night. So Melbourne definitely bounced back from their horrific loss against the New Zealand Warriors. And we saw a much better performance against the Canberra Raiders. But it's just those errors, those missed tackles on the edges is causing a lot of frailties for the Melbourne Storm. They really need to tighten that up. Next week, the Melbourne Storm face the South Sydney Rabbitohs in Melbourne. Here's my early prediction. I think the Melbourne Storm will get back into the winner's circle against South Sydney. But there you have it. There was my review of the Melbourne Storm. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Get your comments in below. I'm really enjoying watching you lose, Melbourne. I have to be honest. But best of luck to you. Enjoy your rugby league and get out of here.